So greetings from Pennsylvania once again, and I'm down here in Chester County today, kind of South Chester County. I'll be doing some hiking at what's called the Cheslin Preserve. I have some friends and fellow YouTubers that have hiked here already, so I thought I'd check it out. But in the process, I found some other interesting sites down here to explore. I'll be on a covered bridge nearby. I'm doing a video on a story about a woman that's buried here called Indian Hannah, kind of a cool little story about her. But I'm going to do a separate video here about something called the Stargazer stone. That kind of popped up. It's on the map for the preserve, and it shows up on Google Maps too. I'm thinking, what's the Stargazer stone? Sounds almost like this little mystical, enchanted place, the Stargazer stone. Well, it has something to do with the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah, so the preserve is down that way. This is Route 162. This is the parking for the preserve. Just up that way is Stargazer Road. Interesting name. And the stone is up that way. But there's a trail that takes you up there. Let me show you the map before it blows away here. Yeah, so once again, we're parked all the way up here. But there's a piece of the park property that goes all the way up here to the Stargazer stone. So we're going to check that out. Looks like you go up a trail and walk up the road just a little bit. Yeah, the Mason-Dixon line. So was it Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon? They're the ones that mapped out the Mason-Dixon line, the line between Pennsylvania and Maryland. And they used the stars to do it. The alignment of the stars to determine where exactly that line was. And we visited a spot actually in the summer of 2023. We were out in Greene County, Pennsylvania, all the way in southwestern PA. Yeah, sorry, just letting some road traffic go. And in that video, on that trip, we kind of dipped down into West Virginia a little bit. We're right on the line, and we visited one of those marker stones, and there was a spot where they did some stargazing to determine where that line was, because in order to make that line as straight as possible, they would use the alignment of the stars to do that. So that's kind of cool. I got some information for it right here. Anyway, here we go. Yeah, you are here. So we're parked, and that's our trail, which I think is that right there. So we're going to walk across this field. Oh, there's the Harlan house. That's where they stayed. That house is old. I think it dates back to 1725. And up here is the Stargazer stone. Yeah. In 1763, nearly 240 years before the widespread use of GPS, surveyors Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon came to the New World to end a bloody 80-year boundary war dispute between Pennsylvania and Maryland. We'll talk about that a little bit too. Yeah, the border was the 15 miles south of Philadelphia, going that way then, of course. There was just one problem. No one knew where that was, so that was their job. You can read. I'm not gonna read all this for you, but it talks about their observatory right there. Cool. Yeah, they set up an observatory to make their observation using a device with a 6-foot-long brass telescope that allowed them to establish their position relative to the stars. Yeah, a marker known as the Stargazer stone is placed to mark the astronomical meridian line north of the observatory. All right, so we're gonna hike up that stone, check it out. I'll tell you a little bit about that history they have there, about the bloody history between Pennsylvania and Maryland, about the border. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I'm gonna make a video on that because I discovered a site just a couple weeks ago relating to that. I really didn't know a whole lot about it. I'm kind of bothered by that because I love history, and it was kind of a piece of history I didn't know a whole lot about. It's called Cressops War. We found it was at Cressops Fort, the location of it. I was hiking one of my videos on the Mason-Dixon Trail. But anyway, let's get going. Let's check out that Stargazer stone. Oh, let's get going. Let's head up this trail. Like I said, that over there is the Harlan house. That's where they stayed. That house is old. In my research, I think it dates back to, let me zoom in on it for you. It dates back to like 1725, I believe. Of course, it's had some additions and all that added on since then, but that's an old place. I'd love to, wouldn't it be cool to go in there? Wouldn't it be even cooler to live there? All right, but let's head up the trail. I think this trail takes us over to the road then. Yeah, so for the longest time there was a dispute between Pennsylvania and Maryland about the border. And it's kind of odd because originally they both agreed on where that border would be. I think it was the 40th parallel. What they call those imaginary lines that go around the world. They call that latitude. But unfortunately, the map that William Penn was looking at was very, what's the word to use? Very inaccurate. So he was agreeing upon those terms based on what the one map he had. Of course, this is back you know, going back to the 1600s, early 1700s, when map making wasn't quite what it is today. So he agreed to those terms without realizing how just inaccurate the map was. Because according to those terms, even his beloved city of Philadelphia would have been within Maryland. Like a good section of parts of, you know, York and Lancaster County would all been part of Maryland. Gotta love the traffic. There's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, so imagine a straight line drawn all the way across southern Pennsylvania. I forget how many miles up, but north, you know, east north of where Philadelphia is. It would have been quite a bit. I'm trying to picture how many miles it would be. Anyway, quite a bit. So it's a lot of land we're talking about. And there was this little mini war fought over it called Cresap's War. I'll put the name down there. Like I said in a recent video, we were hiking the Mason-Dixon Trail. We came upon a historical sign for Cresap's Fort. So I did some research on him. He's an interesting fella. It wasn't a full-out war, just kind of like a border dispute. I think only a couple people really died from it, but it did get bloody though. So, and finally, the King of England is the one who got involved and made a decision on where that border should be. So he kind of ended that war. And then this Mason-Dixon line was a way of firmly establishing a border between the two states. I can see it up there through the trees. There's a little pile of rocks up there. Well, not a pile, but so yes, I think we have to walk up the road just a little bit. I drove down this road to get here, but I didn't see anything. Yeah, I think we can see it out there. That's it up there. That rocky area, so that's where we're headed. So just a stone, but it has an importance to it. This Mason-Dixon line, you often hear about the Mason-Dixon line, you know, even the boundary between the north and the south and all that kind of stuff, but it ended a long-standing, you know, like, was it an 80-year conflict between these two states? So it has an important history to it. It looks like we can actually walk up along the field here instead of on the road. Yep, there it is. I should stress though that this marker is not marking the Mason-Dixon Trail. It's just a place they use as an observatory to help them locate where that line was. Mason-Dixon line is actually south of here, so that's something we gotta do someday. Is all along the Mason-Dixon Trail there are these marker stones. That might make a cool video series to try and find all those. And it was suggested to me in the past, and someone even sent me a bunch of information about it, I think. Here we go. And it's kind of cool just to think, you know, back, was it 1763, you know, Mason and Dixon were here using this location. We're here with all their equipment, mapping out the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah, there it is. The Stargazer stone. Yeah, the Stargazer stone erected in 1764 by Mason-Dixon and locating the Pennsylvania-Maryland boundary line, being 15 miles north thereof and 31 miles due west of Philadelphia. Here also they measured a degree of latitude on the Earth's surface southward, made other astronomical observations, hence the name. Alright, so there you go folks, an important piece of history just out here right next to the road in the middle of a field here. But the family that lived in the Harlan house, they preserved this spot where this stone was over the decades and centuries. So that's why it's still here today. This stone, they're probably the ones that built this wall. The Mason and Dixon did not build this wall. They just placed the stone there, so. Even once again, just kind of cool to think that this is where they were working. That they're the ones that placed that stone. I wonder if we can reach in there and touch that stone. There we go. That's cool too to think that, I mean, they're not, I mean, I'm not like making them into heroes or anything, which is kind of interesting. But to me, it's always just fascinating coming to these spots. Like I said, they're not heroes or things like that, but just to be able to touch something that people in the past, historical figures like that, touched in place, it's just, I just feel like that's kind of neat, kind of cool, I guess, you know. Not that there's some kind of deity or something like that, but it's just interesting. You hear so much about them, and then to be able to be at a spot. Like I said, they would have been here working, using that telescope thing and doing their stuff, and here I am today staying at the exact same spot. Touching the same stone that they touched, anyway. Yeah, but just one last look at it there. Kind of neat that they have the stone wall around it too. I think there's a blue historical sign right there too for the spot, but probably says the same thing as stone does. Alright, so farewell, Stargazer stone. Alright, so I found that to be really interesting. Like for me, as someone who's making all these videos and doing all this research, it's kind of interesting how they all tie together sometimes. Because like I said, I did that video a couple weeks ago where I found that sign for, I think it's called Cressops Fort. I hope I'm saying it right. It's like, I never heard of it before. And then I did some research on that, read about the war, Cressops War. It's like a 7 years war, more like a border dispute, not a full-out war between Pennsylvania and Maryland. I'm going to do a video on that sometime. And then when I was researching the Stargazer stone, they brought up all that information too. It's all kind of tied together. Yeah, I gotta work on that video. Should be an interesting one, I think. Sometimes it's known as, it's Pennsylvania's forgotten conflict. It's one you don't really think of. Pennsylvania's past. Alright, well I'm heading back to the parking lot, so I think that'll be it for this video, folks. It was fun going up there checking out what it was. Like I said, I was researching it. When I found it on Google Maps at first, it was like Stargazer stone. Like I said, is that some kind of a, I don't know, spot that people come out here and do who knows what? It sounds like one of those places where people are, well, you know, taking part in some magic mushrooms or something like that and stargazing. I don't know. But it turned out to be a really neat piece of history. Alright, thanks for coming on, folks. I'm going to do some hiking here at the park or the preserve, so hopefully I'll see you there.